financial services. And I'm particularly excited about this conversation because in my career personally, I've been involved in growth, but mainly from the startup perspective, right? So I think this will be a really exciting discussion on, when we look at it from the investor or VC perspective, what do they actually have to say about growth, right? So hoping to have a really exciting discussion about that today, and can answer some questions as well from the audience. So please do feel free to submit some questions into the chat box as they emerge. We'll save about probably 10 minutes or so at the end of the call to field those questions. Cool. So let me introduce the speakers first, and then we'll dive into the meat of the growth agenda. So first of all, we have Kenneth Li. He's a managing partner at MDI VC Singapore, responsible for the MDI Ventures global expansion and fund initiatives. Was one of the founding members of the MDI Ventures and has been with the firm since the day of its inception. Experience also includes some time at Deloitte, Sistek VC, and one of the earliest VC builders in Indonesia. Subsequently, he also manages several private funds throughout his career, and there are currently 2 funds that actively operate under his management. So pretty deep VC experience in Indonesia. I'm actually pretty familiar with Sistek. They're one of the pioneers of the VC space here in Indonesia, so that's super exciting to have him as a speaker. Second, we have Chandra Fermanto, managing partner of Indogen Capital. He is an experienced managing director with a demonstrated history of working in the investment banking industry, skilled in startup ventures, banking, entrepreneurship, strategic planning, business development, strong business development professional with a bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship from USC. Go Trojans, my brother went there. Raditya Pramana is up third, so partner at Ventura Discovery. Prior to Ventura, he was an investment professional at IMJ Partners and responsible of the fund's early stage VC investments in Indonesia. Raditya was awarded with Forbes Indonesia 30 Under 30. Wow, very impressive in 2020. And chosen as one of the YLI Young Leaders for Indonesia by McKinsey. And he holds a BA from Yunus. So with that, the first question that I want to ask our moderators, just to kind of set the field a little bit. Obviously, the VC space in Indonesia is very diverse, right? There's quite a number of different funds, and I feel like every day I read about a new VC popping up. So why don't we get a feel for what exactly is it that your VCs do and look for? What your portfolio consists of? Any particular verticals, perhaps? Why don't we start with Kenneth, since you were the first one I introduced?
Sure thing. Thanks, Max. Hi, guys. So I'm Kenneth from MDI Ventures. I think the way to explain MDI Ventures right now is we are kind of like a multi-stage VC. So we invest from seed stage all the way to later stage, even to pre-IPO stage. For us, we don't really have a specific sectors that we just focus on. So we can say we're quite agnostic in terms of the way we select our startups. We're part of a large, so one of our LPs was the largest telco in Indonesia, Telkom Group. So we also support the group in kind of like moving towards the digital transformations, and MDI is there to support it. So any type of digital startups, we're always interested in looking. So in the very beginning, we were only looking at Series A Series A plus investments. But I think over the period of the years, we would like to kind of cover the whole kind of like funding ecosystem. So soon we're going to launch our seed stage as well. And actually, we also run one of the largest incubator accelerator program in Indonesia called Indigo. So we work with Telkom Group on that. To date, we've incubated more than about 150 startups since 2012. For MDI, we right now I think we have about 44, 45 startup portfolio since 2016. So quite a different range. We invest in fintech, we invest in SaaS, we invest in logistics, e-commerce, a lot of things. But for us, we don't have a limitation on any specific sectors we can or cannot invest. So feel free, if you're a startup and you're looking for funding, feel free to contact us.
Cool, thanks for sharing, Kenneth. And I guess specifically for you too, before we hop to the next panelist, since you've been in the VC space in Indonesia since the early days, right, with Sistek, how have you seen the field evolve over time, and how have you seen the composition of the portfolio change? Like, have you noticed that maybe back 10 years ago there was like only e-commerce and now it's like more diverse, or is there anything in particular that you've seen?
Yeah. I think when I first started at Sixstack, a lot of I think one of the popular sectors is actually media. Surprisingly, so before all this Tokopedia, Gojek, and everything, one of the popular sectors was media. A lot of people. So Kaskus, I think, being one of the first, and then social medias.
Overall as well.
And then I think around 2013, 14, people are starting to kind of like realize about e-commerce. In Tokopedia, Bukalapak was all started in those years. So e-commerce was very popular in that period, like from 2012, 2013, 14. And then, then we have Gojek, all the on-demand kind of like technologies, right? Nice, yeah. So I think a lot of a lot of startups in the on-demand sectors, on-demand for Gojek, on-demand for this and that. But I think the progress has been relatively quick for Indonesia. We're catching up with a lot of our Southeast Asian countries, but I think it's quite interesting to see how things progress in Indonesia. I think in the past years, one of the most popular field is fintech. So I guess you need financial technology to support all this growth in like e-commerce and also on demand. We feel that in Indonesia, a lot of this population is still unbanked and underbanked. So we need fintech to support this. Lately, what I've started to see is actually the rise in logistics. So we see logistics in 2016, but it's been very slow. But in the past, I think 1 year, I've seen a lot of logistics startup popping up here and there. And I think it's also because, e-commerce has reached to a point where one of the kind of like hindrance to grow is actually on that segment. So a lot of startups are going that way. And I think because of the coronavirus, it also kind of accelerated the whole thing on logistics. But things always progress in the startup world, and I feel that there might be another sector popping up later on after 2020. But yeah, it's always fun working in the startup industry in Indonesia.
Yeah, especially with this whole COVID thing, we have no idea what's going to come next, right?
Yeah. I mean, for me, a lot of people are very negative towards it. For me, I'm actually quite positive, because for me, it kind of accelerated the whole digital adoption, digital transformation thing. So a lot of startups, especially in my portfolio, although they have some problems, but a lot of them also got tailwinds. So they're performing quite good. So hopefully in the next few years, it's going to recover.
Yep. Cool. Thanks so much for sharing. I think that was a really, really good, concise history of the startup sector in the last 15 years or so. So thanks. Yeah. Cool. So let's hop over to Chandra. Chandra, why don't you share a bit about Indogen Capital, what the portfolio looks like, and I guess your experience with them so far.
Hi, Max. Hi, on. So yeah, thank you for the invitations. I really appreciate that. Hello, everyone. My name is Chandra Firmanto. I'm the managing partners of Indogen Capital. So it's an honor actually to share the stage with my peers, Kenneth and Radit. I think like the Indonesian VCs, we are quite close. So it's always good to actually to connect to one another. And for Indogen Capital, we are very new. We started in 2017. We have made 19 investments so far. We are Southeast Asia focused venture capital firms. Same with MDI, we are sector agnostic. So I think it's kind of like we have to do it because like Kenneth mentioned before, that the landscape keeps changing, right? So that's why it's better to be sector agnostic, so we can always look for new sectors. We just actually closed our first close of the second fund, even during COVID. So we actually have a dry powder to invest. So feel free to connect to us if you have any startups fitting into our our investment thesis. So what we look for is actually an startups with clear tractions already of revenue, and then with I think in the pandemic-proof sectors at this moment, obviously, and of course we pay attention actually to operational excellence, and then what we actually help startup with is actually to connect them to the corporations, because we are very active mentors at trade organizations. So we active mentors at the Japanese and the Korean and also the Hong Kong Business Trade Councils. So we can help to connect the startups actually to the big corporations to actually to grow hack your basically immediately, right? So it's kind of like cheat code to help your startups. So that is I think our specialty, and we have been actually helping many of our portfolio companies, the one that actually started overseas, outside from Indonesia, actually to expand to Indonesian market.
Cool, very cool. From those companies that are looking to expand into Indonesia, are there particular countries that they're coming from? Is it mostly other ASEAN countries, or are they from all over?
Mostly we look for the Asian country startups. So we have helped Fantany, as a fintech company from Philippines, to expand to Indonesia, and then also Karsam from Malaysia. So yeah, one of the help that we extended to them actually to connect them to Adira Finance. So Adira has
cool.
Right. So from there, then they can actually grow the used car dealerships in their ecosystems.
So it sounds like a lot of your thesis, if I'm reading between the lines, is actually partnership-led growth. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, maybe we can double click on that a bit more when we dive into the growth part of this conversation. But let's hop over to Raditya. Raditya, can you share a bit about Ventura Discovery and what your portfolio looks like?
Hey, thanks, Max. Well, good. I think it's still the morning, right? Good morning, everyone. I'm Ade, and just a little bit about us. We're an early stage VC fund investing in high growth technology companies all around the region. We started as a firm. We started investing as a firm back in mid 2015. We launched our first fund focusing on Series A and Series B investments, and out of that first fund, we call it Ventura Capital Fund 1, we have invested in 21 different companies. And since late 2018, but we only actively investing in the second fund in around mid 19. We call that fund Ventura Discovery. As the name implies, we look for C to pre-Series A opportunities, so much younger companies, and we we have a much clearer focus in terms of geography. We have always been, Indonesia-based, Indonesia-focused, but with Ventura Discovery, we actually extended our reach into Vietnam as well, where we also set up a team in Ho Chi Minh City. So out of the two funds, we have invested in close to 30 different portfolio companies, where we focus a lot on consumer-facing technology companies. When we first started, I guess that was 2015, right? As Kenneth shared before, it was the, as you can say, like the gold rush, the e-commerce gold rush period between the early 2014 to around mid 2015. And when we looked at the space, there's a lot of horizontal plays. Well, Tokopedia is gaining ground. That was, 6 months after they received the SoftBank investment. Bukalapak and all of the others. Lazada got acquired by Alibaba, but there's so instead of investing in the competing businesses, we actually look at it in a per category level. So we invested in categories that can be big as a standalone and requires like special characteristics to make it work. So just an example, in our portfolio companies, we were the first investor of Sociola, the largest beauty commerce marketplace in Indonesia. Fabelio in the home and living space, Zilingo, the fastest growing fashion e-commerce company, based out of Singapore, started in Thailand. We were one of the first early investor. Karo in the automotive space, service marketplace in Kauding in Malaysia. Bright Story in weddings, and a few others. So we like vertically integrated e-commerce and marketplaces, and a lot of the other consumer-facing technology companies. We also really like education. We were, I guess, one of the first early investor of Ruang Guru. We came in at 2015, and currently the largest online education platform in the nation. We love healthcare. We have invested in, I guess, both Indonesia and Vietnam, in several, I guess, healthcare models that we think could work. And fintech in the alternative lending space, other than the consumer P2P. Many things, we can say that we're also sector agnostic as the other VC firms in the region. I guess mainly because there's not enough opportunities, for kind of fund specialization. So I guess everyone's kind of build it out the same way, but we do have, I guess, preferences, I guess, the pieces that we kind of build out over the years. And what's next for us is still going to focus a lot more on, I guess, the 3.0. We love D2C companies. That's a natural progression of vertically integrated e-commerce and marketplaces. Then the 3.0 will be the direct consumer models, health tech, fintech models, revolving around, I guess, features that can be stacked on top of e-wallets and a few others. So that's a bit about us, and it's good to kind of share the panel with Kenneth and Chandra today.
Cool. Thanks so much for sharing. It's great to see that we have pretty much 3 VCs that are all sector agnostic. So it sounds like we're going to have a pretty diverse discussion regardless of the verticals. I guess one question for you, Raditya, before we jump into the growth specific questions.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, aside from Indonesia, you guys also do investing in Vietnam. Out of curiosity, why Vietnam in particular? ASEAN has a number of different countries. One could argue Philippines is probably more similar to Indonesia. So Vietnam seems like a surprising choice for me.
Okay. No, well, as a fund, we have been investing in Southeast Asia as a whole since we started. Although half of the time we actually set up an office there, we are super excited about Vietnam because I guess that's one of the fastest growing economy in the region for the past 5 years. And it's not just that. There's a lot of similarities that we can see from the tech ecosystem's progression in Indonesia. It almost looks like Jakarta back in 2015, right? All of the macroeconomic indicators are pointing in the right direction. But I don't want to talk much about that. But what's very different, right? There are 2 things. Like one, the talent pool. The talent pool is just very strong. I see a lot of quality companies, very young, like 3-6 months old, but really polished products. There's a lot of engineering, strong engineering-based leaders that's starting up, like new ventures there. And secondly, there's a lot of capital available in the market. I think compared to all of the other Southeast Asian countries other than Indonesia, the one that got everyone excited, it's Vietnam, right? With the Chinese intention, with the China-U.S. trade war, the economy has been benefiting out of everyone else, and the manufacturing industry is booming, middle class is growing, and the market is it's much simpler, right? In Indonesia, when we talk about the nation, it's dispersed over like thousands of islands. Well, there, you need to conquer 2 different cities with 2 different cultures, the north and the south, Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, and you capture almost half of the population. So in terms of I guess the signals towards Vietnam, like investors really like it, and that creates a lot of opportunity for follow-on investments, and also like attracts like strong talents to kind of build a company over there. Compared to the other markets in Southeast Asia, to be honest, everyone has been kind of been showing promise, like in the Philippines and Thailand, in Malaysia, for example. But to be completely honest, I don't think it has, none is as exciting as Vietnam.
Yeah, cool. Very, very cool. Thanks for sharing. And I hear you on the manufacturing shift. Last time I was in Hanoi, I went to Halong Bay. Literally the entire stretch of the road while you're driving there, you see like Foxconn, Canon, Toyota.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. Like a lot of the manufacturing is moving there.
I think Samsung's contribution to Vietnam's GDP is above 5%, if I'm not mistaken. That's crazy, right?
Samsung's a beast. I think they contribute to what, 30% of Korea's GDP or something indirectly. It's crazy.
That's why
we need to have our own Samsung in Indonesia.
Yeah.
So all right, cool.
Yeah,
thanks for sharing. Yeah.
Of course.
Let's shift gears a bit and talk a bit more specifically on growth. So I guess before we dive into growth, I think growth is one of those terms that gets thrown around as one of these new hot buzzwords, kind of like big data or insert here as a service, right? The startup sector seems to mint these every few months. So I think before we even discuss what the best practices are with growth hacking and whatnot, why don't we start by defining what is growth hacking, and how do you actually measure it? Kenneth, Chandra, Raditya, whoever wants to take this one first, feel free to jump in.
Maybe the senior can go first.
Sure, we're gonna pick on you, Kenneth.
Well, I think I'm less senior than one. But of course, okay. So
I actually meant by Chandra.
Seriously?
so Chandra, you can go first.
I feel mean.
Sure.
By age.
Yeah, by age, I'm the senior. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so basically, of course, for growth, right? So for growth, we measure it based on depends on I think the industry first, right? So we have revenue, we have number of users, we have GMV, GSV, right? So it depends, right? But I think during these COVID situations, then if you measure growth, then you have to measure, I think, real revenue. You have to measure profitability at this moment. So I think the world has changed a bit because I think everyone is a bit worried about the uncertainty in the future. So I think the wise move is actually to measure based on revenue at this moment. So that is, I think, the keys that people are looking for. And then in terms of, I think like the growth hacking is basically just utilizing between the traditional marketing, the new marketing sectors, right? And then any means possible actually to achieve growth, right? And it's actually one of the key points for startups to defend themselves against traditional businesses, right? So that is have been like the key factors why this industry has been very exciting, because when you look at the traditional sectors, is quite impossible for them actually to achieve like 5 to 6x of growth in 1 year, let's say. But for startups, it's like kind of like used to be the norms, right? So the minimum has to be like had to be like 3x, right? But I think at this moment we have to balance a bit between growth and also expenses. So at the end of the day, we still need to grow faster than traditional businesses, but we also have to pay attention to expenses.
Cool. Yeah, completely agree. Actually, you know, when I was at Gojek, I think we actually saw this very palpable shift from being super focused on kind of like acquire customer at all costs. Then we saw, you know, the IPOs of Lyft and Uber, and we saw that they weren't profitable. And then the whole WeWork thing happened, and then there was this like very palpable shift in the overall VC startup industry where it was like, maybe we shouldn't just focus on acquisition and cash burn at all costs. How do we actually frame it in a more sustainable revenue-based lens? So I think what you just said completely, you know, resonates. And in fact, the whole COVID-19 situation has accelerated that, if anything, right?
Yeah, that's why I say I really like the when Kenneth said that is he actually appreciate the COVID situation, because is actually rebalance everything, right? So basically, making the startups have to think about achieving growth, but not at all costs, right? So I think it is a very important key message for everyone here. So I'm curious also to hear more from Kenneth. So maybe Kenneth, you can share a bit about the not growing at all costs.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think Chandra, I mean, we've talked a lot about, how we select our startups, how we approach, growth and everything. And for me, I think one definition on growth is like, I say like when everything fits, right? When everything fits means like you're not only product market fit, but you're also business model fit. So that was I think the way to put it, what Chandra just explained is that for me, startup is a business, right? So obviously when you're building a product, I'm not only looking for startup who are building a product that people would use, but a product that people wants to pay. So something like that, right? So when I pay attention to the growth part, I always try to find, the product that can grow when people are still paying. A lot of startups are focusing on, oh yeah, downloads, active users, blah blah blah, and everything. But when they started introducing kind of like business model to it, like you have to pay for a subscription, then you start seeing a lot of churn. So that's not something that I want to see, right? When a good product, I think a good startups is when you introduce a business model, people are still paying for that stuff. So that's kind of companies that I'm looking for. And I think for a lot of startups, especially in our portfolio, that's the kind of things that I want them to focus on. So I'm not, always swayed about like, oh, we got this hundreds, thousands, or millions of users. We got for SaaS company, we did like POC with 200 companies. I don't care about it. It's not paid customer, right? So what I care is about paying customers and obviously the top line revenue. And of course, the metrics that we always use for all these startups is about obviously revenue, so sales, and then customer stability. So there's very low churn, and obviously the health of their finances. So I think Chandra mentioned about the finance part, where a lot of companies I think struggled in this COVID situation because they didn't plan ahead for something like this, right? So I want to see like one of the first thing that we did for most of our portfolios is we check on their finances health. We make sure that they have like at least 15 months runway to go over this period, right? Because I believe like after all this corona situation subsides, I think they can recover. But going to this situation is what matters. So on growth, we don't push as hard on getting new customers, but just maintaining the current customers. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, makes sense. Thanks for sharing. Raditya, you want to add anything?
Sure. I guess before jumping into how do investors see growth during this COVID-19 time, I guess it's useful to kind of take a step back on what is growth hacking, right? Since that's the topic is among the startups community is just how do you grow? How do you grow? I think growth hacking is too overused, I believe, but it's very simple, right? It's an experimental approach to marketing and customer acquisition, because early stage companies, they have very limited resources, and with that limited resources, startups need to explore the most efficient ways to acquire and optimize conversion rate. So that is basically what it is, right? So to put it into today's context, right? I think it's it doesn't mean that the startup should not grow. The startup should continue to explore avenues to acquire customers, and the growth hacking mindset should always be there, but not not growth at all costs, right? I guess Kenneth and Chandra maybe know that we're very, very stingy, right? We really don't believe in growth by measuring vanity metrics. So make sure that when you're experimenting on different marketing channels, on different whatever way, so like different acquisition channels, whether it's offline, online, you need to measure it in the right way, measure what matters, and always find ways to improve every stage in your customer acquisition funnel, and that is growth hacking, because I guess Chandra and Kenneth kind of shared their thoughts around like today's situation, and we can also dig deeper into that on how we see startups should grow. But in short, when the unit economics work, right? When the customer acquisition cost can be broken even in a vast in such a short period of time, that means the growth channels is quite sustainable and replicable. Then they can just pump money, but because it makes sense, they will recoup all of their customer acquisition costs in maybe just a few months. But now what's done wrong is when the numbers just don't work. So you can never get back all of the things that you have spent on to acquire just one customer. So opinion.
Cool. Yeah, 100% agree with what you said about growth hacking. And in fact, if I can add on, when I was leading the growth team at Gojek, one of the things that initially we focused a lot on, right, as I mentioned earlier, was really this acquisition aspect. And then I think as we hit COVID, one of the most striking things that I noticed was, fundamentally, and this is one of my favorite definitions of growth, actually, what a growth team is supposed to do is growth is the scientific method applied to KPIs. So what that actually says is it's not, ironically, growth isn't just about growth in a way, right? So the way that we approached it was really growth is just about experimentation, and experimentation can be applied to anything. It can be applied to customer acquisition metrics. It can be applied to retention metrics, but it could also be applied to cost saving metrics. It could be applied to revenue growth metrics. So I think the last 6 months or so at Gojek was really focused on applying this experimental approach, but to collections for our fintech products, right? Because without collecting on repaying customers, you can't retain them. So it's kind of a weird mindset, because it was like, we're using this whole like A/B testing growth approach, but we're applying it to something that's not traditionally considered a growth area. So I think when I think about growth, I think about experimentation and basically just thinking like a scientist rather than thinking about growth at all costs. So I think you really hit it on the head with how you characterized it.
Very spot on, Max, because I think the most common, I guess, mistake that I've seen, like most early stage startups do, is just to measure, measure all of the things that don't matter, basically. So I guess identifying identifying the numbers together with your investors is the right way. Sometimes they feel good because these vanity metrics is performing well, but it doesn't really mean anything. So you're very spot on, Max.
Cool. So a follow-up question is, since we've kind of defined growth and we've characterized how all three of your VCs look at growth, especially in the context of COVID, can you share any examples of unique tactics or strategies that some of your portfolio companies have employed in order to growth hack? One famous example, right, is in Uber, right? When they first created a growth team per se within their company, the team introduced a referral feature, and that referral feature is like, one of the things that's credited with Uber's exponential growth. So perhaps in your respective portfolios, there have been other examples of startups here in Indonesia that have employed similar unique tactics that have enabled them to actually growth hack. Whoever wants to go first. We don't have to go by seniority.
Yeah. maybe I can start first.
Yeah, go ahead, Radit. You can go first.
This is also very interesting, right? Sorry if there's a knocking sound at the in the background. There's some workers, I guess, fixing some of my parts of my house. Anyways, so what's very interesting, B2B merchandise for enterprises, right? They start out digital, run by young guys. It's not our portfolio, but it's a good friend of mine. They try to do everything, right? All of the customer acquisition channels that's available out there, online acquisition channels. But what's interesting is that when they actually started, hey, why don't we try this? They started sending out pamphlets or catalog to enterprises, to their enterprise's address, which is a very old school way of generating leads, right? But the result was amazing because, well, the knocking sound got louder. The result was amazing because the conversion on those catalogs are so good, right? Because in the end, everyone is acquiring through digital channels, and no one is sending those catalogs anymore. So they stood out from the procurement division's point of view. They reached them out directly, so the number of leads got increased. The conversion rate goes up. It works very well. So what I'm trying to say here is that sometimes, like, the weirdest way, or it's just an old school way, right? You need to step outside of your box, right? Get outside of your box and find out, like, whatever ways to do it, even though it may seem considered conventional. So that's one example. I have a few more, but I think the rest can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll go next. So I think one of the interesting growth hack stories that I've seen from our portfolio is on Credivo. When I still remember when all these e-commerce were competing for the, like, cashback and discounts. Like Tokopedia has a lot of discounts, Kalapak has a lot of discounts, but obviously I think until a certain point they started to run out on all this cashback, so they start to dial down. And then Credivo came in with double the max amount that they ever did. So I think the max cashback I've seen in Tokopedia was around 500K per purchase or per transaction. Then Credivo came in with like 1 million cashback, and that thing suddenly just like jumped up. Like for customer acquisition, it just like go through the roof. Like we went, I think, from a few thousands weekly to like 100,000 users in just like a span of a few weeks alone. So it was one of the interesting story, right? But I think what is important is actually about the timing. If they introduce this kind of promotions when everyone is burning, then it's not going to be as effective. I think one of the interesting thing that I've seen this year is actually a similar strategy by Shopee Pay. I think last year everyone was talking about OFO. I think yes, Max, about GoPay, right? I think everyone was, I think, dialing down. I think at the beginning of COVID, but I think Shopee Pay was actually dialing up in Corona. I've seen a lot of places. I don't know, Max, maybe you can also confirm this since you're part of the growth hacking team in Gojek, but I've seen Shopee Pay ramping up like promotions and a lot of different parts, especially in a lot of retail, shops, right? And I've actually seen an article a few days back stating that Shopee Pay is actually catching up with OFO and GoPay. So yeah, I think that's one of the interesting strategies I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, very interesting. I agree with Kenneth. The Shopee Pay, I've been paying attention as well. I think they are very smart in capturing the opportunity where everyone else is dialing down, and then they're actually dialing up, but maybe at half the cost or maybe lesser. I'm pretty sure. So it's actually there's an opportunity in every crisis, right? So same with the Shopee, right? So they have enough cash. We know really well. They're the parents company. The stocks is actually doing really well in US, right? So they have the dry powder actually to spend at this moment. Then this cannot be better time to spend at this moment, right? Than right now, because all your competition is actually not doing anything, right? And then so I think it's cannot be tailored the same for everyone. So it depends on your situation, right? So I would just share one example from our portfolio company, Travelio. So Travelio is heavily impacted by COVID situations. So the good things, like Kenneth as well, we make sure that all our portfolio company at least have 15 months runway. So for them, they are very healthy. They have about 38 months runway. And from there, they're kind of like analyzing what they have and what they don't have, right? So it's something that most startups will forget. You have something on hands already. So what can you utilize with what you have already on the table? So with Travelio, they have number of users, right? They have a big number of users. They have been growing rapidly since last year. So they have a big number of users. Tractions increased by 5 to 7 times than before. So they look at the trends right now. So if they want to push for, let's say, apartment rentals, is going to be a challenge, right? But the trend actually shifting towards grocery shopping. So using the same talent that they have without actually adding more costs, so they develop what is called as Travelio Mart, so to increase the growth of the company. So they introduced Travelio Mart 1 month after the, I think like in April, 1 month after the peak of COVID in Jakarta, so which was at March, right? And immediately they get good tractions, and then you don't have to even spend too much, because basically all the Travelio current users will immediately get the notifications, and then they want to try to use, right? Just give a small promotion, sacrifice a bit, and actually have very good margins with the Travelio Mart. So I think you have to analyze what you have actually currently in your company, and then maybe you can utilize that as well for growth before actually spending even more.
Cool. Yeah. I did not know that Travelio pivoted into that space, but that's a very interesting, opportunistic move on their part. And sounds like Chandra, you and Kenneth were talking a lot about kind of product innovation led growth, and Raditya more talking about channel innovations. And I actually really liked your example, Raditya, because in a past life I was working at a fintech called Opportune in San Francisco, and we were struggling a bit in terms of growing our top line users, and we experimented with a new channel, which was actually direct mail, like literally physically mailing flyers, and it ended up being our growth engine. And a year after that program was launched, they ended up IPOing. So I mean, it's just like finding these weird out of the box ways to grow your customer base. And being a contrarian is always the best way to go, right? When everybody's just saturating, Facebook, Instagram, etc., you have to be able to figure out a way to reach your customers in a unique way. And then to Chandra and Kenneth's point, like I think what you mentioned is quite interesting on kind of these product innovation fronts to grow and to acquire additional customers. I think Gojek recently did the same thing, kind of doubling down on the grocery and the mart as well, and it's kind of a way to ensure that the use cases that are being brought up, during this crisis time are still catered to. So it's interesting to see kind of these two different lenses: channel-based, product innovation lens. But anyway, with that, since we're kind of reaching the end of time, I want to open it up for questions from the audience. I think we have around 4 or 5 already. So let me just read them in chronological order. The first one we have is from Thomas Joseph. He is asking if you guys can share tips. This is not really growth hacking related, but more on the founding team and an organizational structure. So what kind of tips can you share with an early stage startup to find an ideal co-founder?
Wow, that's a very hard question, man. I think it's up to the founders to kind of like select their own co-founders, right? But I think one of the important stuff is you have to make sure that when you first met your co-founder, you have to make sure you have the same directions. I've seen a lot of examples when co-founders splits in midway because they have a different way of achieving the same vision, right? So make sure that I think you guys are on the same page, have the same vision on how to grow the company before looking at everything else.
Yeah, so I think my suggestions would be to attend as many networking events as possible, because by doing that, then basically you can expand your networks, you can meet many people, many capable people, right? And from there, then maybe you'll be able to meet somebody that will become your future co-founders, right? But again, like Kenneth mentioned, please do your due diligence, make sure that you guys are on the same page, make sure that he's not only maybe talking nicely to you, maybe you can do something together first to get a feel before actually moving toward partnerships. Because usually the problem will be the one party is not putting up as much effort as the other party, then it's going to go really bad immediately. Okay, so somebody can probably have a work ethic of even answering WhatsApp on weekends, for example, and then the other party maybe will not want to be bothered on weekend. It's going to be very messy just by having that.
Yeah. I guess just to add on top of it, again, chemistry is everything. For me, you need to find someone that you can trust. So it's not just about finding someone that you think might be good, but someone that it's almost looking for a girl to marry, right? So you really need to, proses PDKT-nya harus panjang lah. It's not something where you can do just by looking at someone's CV. The skills, well, when it's complementary, then it's great. One is a business leader, one is an engineering leader, then that would be great, right? But what is most important, I guess I just wanted to kind of remind everyone this, is that you need to have an aligned incentive. So I think what I mean by that is, you cannot expect someone to work as hard as you if his or her ownership is what 1/20th, compared to the main co-founders, right? You need to make sure that they're well incentivized, because great talents and great entrepreneurs always think in opportunity cost, right? They can spend 14 hours a day building your company, and this is their payout, making someone else's rich. But you need to kind of structure it in a way that you can be successful together. There's a lot of solo founders who is very who doesn't understand that. They think it's their idea, they started it, this is their baby, and they don't treat the co-founders as just like any other co-founder, and the same way in the way that they give their ownership, right? You cannot really call someone your co-founder when you have 90% and 95% they have like 5% only. So that is just a reminder. I guess everything else is pretty much covered by Chandra and Kenneth.
Cool, great, thanks guys. Let's jump to the next question. Actually, the next question and the third question are pretty similar, so I'm going to combine them. So the second question is technically around the funding aspect of building at an MVP stage. And the other question is around kind of what is the right stage Like, what are the signs that a founder should look for in terms of the stage of their company when it's appropriate to start looking for funding? So I guess to just combine those two questions, it's really at what point in time of the evolution of the startup is it appropriate to start looking for funding? Is it too early at the MVP stage, or is there something that they need to demonstrate first before they actually start approaching VCs?
Okay, I'll start with this. So for me, there's
I think it really depends. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, you want to start, Radit? Okay, I'll give it to you.
No, my signal is breaking. You can go ahead first.
Okay. Yeah. So I think I think it doesn't really matters when you start for funding. It's I mean, there's a certain companies that are already being funded even before they launch their product, meaning that maybe they did an MVP, and then it's actually looking for the right investors, right? Obviously, when you're in the very early phase of the startup stage, I think you're looking more into angel investors and then early stage VCs, incubators. And then once you build your product, you have kind of like a business model fit and stuff like that. Then you're looking for Series A investors or maybe a growth stage VCs. For us, I think the reason why we created multiple stage of funds is because we want to cover everything, right? So for you guys who are building MVP products, we have the fund for that, which is on the accelerator and incubator fund, which is on Indigo. So we do funding up to like 2 million is about 150K probably. So for you guys, you can go there. But if you go to me, because I'm doing like Series A, I don't think it will be a good fit, right? So for one of the advice is to kind of like talk to the right investors when you're at any different state of time. But yeah, there's no right or wrong when to start looking for investors. I think it's all about talking to the right investors.
Yes, I agree with Kenneth as well. So basically, there are different kind of funds with different appetite as well. So it depends on what stage are you looking for. Then basically you can find the right investors. But if you don't have revenue at this moment, if you're at the MVP stage, then I would suggest to look for angel investors, somebody from the industry that can somewhat give the approval that this is going to be destructive in the ecosystems. Okay, Radit, you want to add anything?
I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay. Cool. So we'll take one last question. I know there's still a number, but let me pick something that's very topical to growth from Reka. And also from Merlinda, because it's kind of related. So from Reka, she's asking what part of the growth hacking funnel should startups focus on post-COVID? Should it be back to the customer acquisition, or more on the retention, or optimizing the UX? And then similarly, Merlinda asks, for merchant acquisition in particular, is it okay to start offering free trials at an early stage? So whoever wants to take that first, go ahead.
Maybe I'll answer the question from Merlinda. So I think what is very I assume that you're running a subscription service here. Usually, when you're giving free trials, you always want it to be at a very limited period of time. 1 year is a stretch. For me, 3 months is a max. Because then, if you need to wait 1 year to kind of measure your conversion rate from free trial to paying users, then you're not going to learn fast. right? The idea is for you to really measure up whether customers are willing to pay for your product and at what price, right? And free trials kind of purpose is for them to kind of test it out first, and you need to measure it pretty quick. For me, 3 months is usually a max, and 1 year is way too long. You need to take a look at your cohort, and you need to wait for a long time to kind of do that, because because when you measure everything right around conversion to paying channels, your churn rate on non-paying users are irrelevant for me, because it's usually high, but it doesn't mean that the product is not good. Maybe they just don't need it since it's free. They might as well try it, right? So always try to get paying customers as early as possible for any subscription services, but experiment a lot on pricing.
Yeah, I think I agree with Radit as well. You can see that all of us is not by design, okay? It's not by design that we all agree to one another, but I think it's because maybe for today, even without prior maybe interactions, we kind of like agree to one another, right? So why? Because it's what is happening at the field right now. So we will not be comfortable, let's say, if you give free trials, let's say for 3 months, then after that you will charge subscription. Even 3 months is a stretch for me, personally. So let's say
Yeah.
1 month, then you cannot get them to pay you, then it's a validation that your startup is actually not working. So honestly, it's a tough pill to swallow. So it's a thing that you have to go back to the drawing board. So I will suggest what Kenneth mentioned before. Actually, try to do a trial first, so small samples. Maybe not immediately just launch the apps, give free subscription to everyone, but maybe work on a very tight community and then do a trial first, 2-3 persons, get feedbacks from them. Why do you think you don't want to pay? Why don't you pay for my subscriptions or services, right? You need to find out. So from there, then probably you can improve your product and services. Then you can offer the free 1 month trial, and then maybe after the free 1 month trial, then they will pay you, right? So try to be very efficient in expenses, especially at this moment, because you really need to have at least 15 months runway at the minimum to navigate through the COVID situations. So even if you are in the sectors that are actually not affected by COVID, still it's a wise move actually to conserve, because cash is king during these kind of situations. Okay, so that would be my advice to you.
So yeah, I think adding to Chandra, it doesn't really matters if it's about keeping or engaging new users. For me, like I mentioned before, it's about getting more revenue, right? So it can be from increasing your ARPU or obviously increasing the number of user base, right? I think for me that what matters on accelerating after this post-COVID situation. Like some of our startups in our portfolio, they prefer to kind of like keep their number.
Ya ditutup jelek lah.
Yeah, keep their number of customers, but they try to kind of increase their ARPU. So that's their focus for growth. But on another startups, they're trying to engage for additional users, new users, but keeping the ARPU level the same. So I think it really depends. And also with growth, I think you guys should already heard about A/B testing. When they say A/B testing, I think it's continuously improve A/B testing. So micro improvement, adding new services, taking out old services. So for you guys who are doing this, it's not about putting just one services and then putting it for like a lengthy period of time. And then measure it for a long time. I think it's also micro adjustment or fine tuning that is also important in creating the right model for growth. And I think there's no let's say just one way to say that this is the right way or the wrong way. It's just, for me, it's always trusting the data. So throw away the assumptions that you have that, oh, this will grow this, this way will grow this way. It's all on the data. If your data tells a different story, trust the data. Don't trust your assumption, because it's sometimes kind of like cloud your judgment on trying out all this, like I said, micro adjustments. If it doesn't, like a lot of startups I see is like, oh, why doesn't it work according to my assumption? Well, maybe it's not the assumption that is wrong. Maybe it's not because of the data that is wrong, but it's because our assumption is wrong. So, try a lot of things, do micro adjustments on your growth strategy. Yep.
Cool. 100% agree with that. And I think just to wrap up and add my 2 cents into this, I think when we were first launching Pay Later, which is our consumer credit product in Gojek, and Go Modal, which is our merchant credit product at Gojek, I can't tell you how many experiments we ran. I mean, even the very first pricing experiment we launched on Pay Later, there was like, it wasn't an A/B test, it was an A, B, C, D, E, F, G test. Right? Same thing with merchant. We didn't even just test the pricing, we tested the tenor, we tested the way that the merchants would interact with the application flow. So I think to answer your question, Rick, I mean, it all comes back down to testing, and having an open mind to, basically let go of any assumptions you might have, and just trusting the data to guide you through the process of product development. I think that's ultimately what growth hacking is really about. It's all about the data at the end of the day.
Sure.
All right.
Cool. So go ahead.
Okay. So thank you for everyone for coming to this event. And I would like to thank the panels, Raditya, Chandra, and Kenneth, for your insights in the growth hacking and your insights in business too, in startups. And I would like to thank the moderator, Max Hassan, for coming and help moderate this event. So we would like to invite everyone to come to our next event at 1, which is the pitch battle event. It's going to be fun. It's a pitch battle where 5 startups are going to pitch their business ideas to a panel of judges, including Raditya,